Imagine you are 30 years old, living in the middle of the Stone Age. According to almost every pop culture movie, comic book, and casual history meme, you are ancient. You are the village elder, an absolute fossil of a human being with one foot in the grave, getting ready to hand over your spear to the next generation before you naturally expire of old age. We have all heard the famous statistic plastered across textbooks and articles. The average life expectancy of a prehistoric human was just 30 years old. It paints a picture of a past that was nasty, brutish, and incredibly short. It makes us look back at our ancestors with pity, assuming their bodies simply wore out after 3 decades of running from saber-toothed tigers. But what if I told you that this widely accepted fact is built on a massive mathematical misunderstanding? The idea that 30 was considered an old man or an old woman in the Paleolithic era is completely false. In fact, if you transported a prehistoric human into the modern world, gave them a haircut, and put them in a suit, they wouldn't just look like us, they would age very much like us. To understand why we have been so wrong about human lifespan, we have to look closely at a statistical trap that has completely warped our view of human history. The trap comes down to the difference between two completely different concepts: life expectancy and lifespan. Lifespan is the maximum biological limit of how long a human body can theoretically stay alive. Life expectancy, on the other hand, is just a mathematical average. It is calculated by taking the ages of everyone who died in a specific population and dividing it by the number of people. And this is where the math plays a cruel trick on our perception of the past. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine a tiny tribe of just 2 people. One of them lives a long, healthy life and dies peacefully by the fire at 80 years old. The other tragically dies as a newborn baby at age 0. If you average those two numbers together, the life expectancy of that tribe is exactly 40 years. If a modern archaeologist digs up those statistics thousands of years later, they might conclude that humans in this tribe biologically maxed out at 40. But that is completely ignoring the 80-year-old who was walking around, gathering food, and telling stories. This mathematical illusion is exactly what happened to our ancient ancestors. The Stone Age wasn't a time where adults magically dropped dead at 30. Instead, it was a time of unimaginably high infant and child mortality. In the prehistoric world, there were no vaccines, no antibiotics, no sterile hospitals, and no advanced neonatal care. The birth process itself was incredibly dangerous for both the mother and the infant. If a baby survived birth, they immediately faced a world filled with lethal pathogens. A simple scratch could lead to a fatal infection. A seasonal bout of diarrhea, which is easily treatable today, was a swift death sentence for a prehistoric toddler. Anthropologists estimate that in many ancient hunter-gatherer societies, up to half of all children never made it to their 15th birthday. The first few years of life were a brutal, unforgiving biological filter. This massive wall of early deaths dragged the statistical average down completely, anchoring that famous 30 years number into the history books. But here is the incredible truth. If you were a prehistoric human who managed to survive the dangerous gauntlet of childhood, your statistical outlook changed entirely. Once you successfully navigated past the age of 15, your immune system was battle-tested and robust. You knew how to avoid predators, you knew what plants were poisonous, and your body was incredibly strong from constant natural physical activity. An ancient human who reached their teenage years could easily expect to live to be 60, 70, or even 80 years old. We know this isn't just a theory, because the evidence is written directly into our bones. When osteologists and bioarchaeologists examine the fossilized remains of ancient humans, they don't just look at the size of the skeleton. They look at biological markers of age. They examine the wear and tear on tooth enamel, the fusion of cranial sutures in the skull, and the density of the bones. And time again, archaeological sites around the world reveal the remains of people who lived deep into their golden years. There are skeletons of individuals who suffered severe injuries, like broken femurs or missing teeth, who lived for decades after their trauma. They couldn't hunt, and they couldn't chew tough meat, which means they were being actively cared for and fed by their tribe well into their old age. We can also look at modern hunter-gatherer populations that live in ways very similar to our ancestors. Researchers have spent decades studying groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or the San people in southern Africa, who historically lived without access to modern medicine. The demographic data from these tribes perfectly mirrors the prehistoric reality. They experience high infant mortality, dragging their official life expectancy down to the 30s or 40s. Yet, if you walk into their camps, you will see a vibrant population of elders. You will see grandmothers and grandfathers in their 70s actively participating in the daily life of the tribe. This brings us to a fascinating question. Why did evolution allow humans to live so long in the first place? In the animal kingdom, most species die relatively soon after they lose the ability to reproduce. Once you can no longer pass on your genes, nature generally considers your biological job done. But humans are a spectacular exception. Women go through menopause and lose the ability to reproduce, yet they are biologically designed to live for decades afterward. Evolution doesn't waste energy, so these elders must have provided a massive survival advantage to the species. Scientists call this the grandmother hypothesis. In the harsh conditions of the Stone Age, human children were incredibly expensive to raise. Unlike a baby horse that can run mere hours after being born, human babies are born completely helpless and require years of intense, calorie-draining care before they can contribute to the tribe. A mother simply could not hunt, forage, and protect multiple helpless children all on her own. This is where the elders became the ultimate evolutionary cheat code. Older members of the tribe, particularly grandmothers, shifted their focus from having their own children to ensuring the survival of their grandchildren. They foraged for reliable, easy-to-reach calories like tubers and roots, while the younger adults took on the high-risk, high-energy task of hunting large game. More importantly, these elders provided critical childcare, freeing up the parents to gather more resources. But the value of ancient elders went far beyond just gathering berries and watching the kids. In a world before writing, the internet, or books, an 80-year-old brain was the ultimate prehistoric hard drive. The elders were the living, breathing encyclopedias of the tribe. If a catastrophic drought hit the region, a drought that only happens once every 50 years, the younger hunters would have absolutely no idea what to do. But an elder might remember exactly where the hidden water source was because they saw it happen when they were a child. They knew the intricate details of tool making, the cycles of the seasons, and the medicinal properties of rare plants. An elder's memory was literally the difference between life and death for the entire group. Evolution didn't just allow old people to exist, it actively selected for them because a tribe with elders was a tribe that survived. Today, we look around at our modern world, with our advanced hospitals and incredible medicine, and we pat ourselves on the back. We think we have fundamentally conquered nature and miraculously doubled the human lifespan. We believe we are biologically superior to our ancient ancestors. But the reality is much more humbling. Modern medicine has not significantly increased the maximum limit of the human lifespan. A healthy body today caps out around the same age a healthy body capped out 50,000 years ago. What we have actually done is far more beautiful but subtly different. We haven't created superhumans who live twice as long. Instead, we have successfully dismantled the brutal filter of childhood. We invented vaccines, antibiotics, and sanitation, which stopped our babies and children from dying of preventable diseases. We simply fixed the math. We pushed the statistical average up to match what the human body was always biologically capable of achieving. So the next time you hear someone make a joke about a 30-year-old caveman having a midlife crisis, you can smile knowing the truth. Our ancestors were not frail, short-lived creatures who died just as they reached adulthood. They were incredibly resilient. They grew old, their hair turned gray, their skin wrinkled, and they sat by prehistoric fires, passing down the wisdom of a lifetime. The ancient elder is not a myth. They are the very reason we are all here today.